A tech billionaire, Alec Grant, gave his AI project the name of the woman who humiliated him on stage, and what began as pride ended in something no one expected. Before we begin, please drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Alec Grant walked on stage like he always did, confident, polished, unshakable. The spotlight hit him just right. The audience waited, but halfway through his speech, someone stood up. She didn't raise her hand. She didn't wait her turn. She simply asked a question that cut through the applause like a blade. And from that moment on, nothing in Alec's world would be the same. The lights of the auditorium dimmed, settling the room into a gentle hush as a single spotlight hit the polished stage floor. The backdrop glowed with bold red letters, Future by Design. It was a TEDx-style summit in San Francisco, one of those elite conferences where ideas shaped markets and speakers left with investment offers tucked in their suit pockets. Alec Grant stood center stage, tall, poised, and pristine in a deep navy suit tailored to precision. The wireless mic clipped to his lapel barely caught the smooth timbre of his voice, but the audience leaned in instinctively, captivated. Every human decision, he said, his tone calm but commanding, is ultimately predictable if you know where to look. A ripple of interest moved through the crowd. Alec's eyes scanned the sea of faces, influencers, VCs, tech journalists. They were all there, and they were listening. Behind him, the screen lit up with data visualizations, movement patterns in cities, consumer heat maps, facial micro-expression analysis. He gestured toward the cascading streams of information. What you see here, he continued, isn't just data, it's foresight. With the right architecture, AI doesn't just react, it anticipates, it shapes. Applause broke out, not raucous, but affirming, respectful. Alec offered a modest smile, the kind that barely touched his eyes. But then, from stage left, a second figure emerged. Julie Newman, no corporate sheen, no tailored suit. She wore dark jeans, boots still dusted from field work, and a simple black blouse. Her hair was tied in a low knot, no makeup except a faint line of kohl under determined eyes. She held no clicker, no slides, just a mic in hand and something unmistakable in her posture, a refusal to perform. "Before you all clap too hard," she began, voice steady. "Let's remember what's missing from this picture." The audience stiffened, not in fear, but in friction. Alec turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "You say decisions are predictable, Alec," she said, walking slowly across the stage like it belonged to her just as much as him. "But predicted by whom? For whose benefit? You collect behavior. But do you ask for consent?" Alec didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened slightly. Julie pointed behind her to the glowing charts. "We're not your products. We're not patterns to be monetized." "It's not about control," Alec replied, his voice like ice under pressure. "It's about optimizing society, reducing waste, predicting risk. That's exactly what every surveillance state says before they start sorting people like files." Her voice didn't rise, but it deepened, anchoring itself into the moment. A murmur ran through the audience now, some defensive, others clearly moved. Julie's voice softened, but her words struck harder. "If your system can predict how I'll vote, what I'll buy, who I'll date, what's left of my freedom to choose." Alec hesitated, just half a second, but she caught it. "It's not the code that scares me," she added. "It's the people who write it and think they're above the consequences." Silence. And then a wave of applause. Stronger this time. Unpolished, uncertain, human. Julie didn't look at Alec as she exited stage right, her steps unhurried. Alec stayed in the spotlight, perfectly still, watching her go with something between contempt and reluctant admiration burning behind his composed exterior. Somewhere inside him, something had cracked. The audience didn't know it yet. But that was the moment the real story began. The morning after the summit, Alex sat in his penthouse office on the 59th floor of the Grant Technologies building, watching the sunlight glance off the glass towers across San Francisco. His phone vibrated against the lacquered desk, again and again. Notifications, not from his board or developers, but from journalists, bloggers. His assistant had stopped filtering them. Julie Newman was trending, not just in tech circles, but everywhere. A clip of her calmly walking across the stage, dismantling his philosophy in under 3 minutes, had gone viral overnight. It had been posted with the caption, "This woman just destroyed Silicon Valley's most powerful CEO with one question." Over 6 million views by breakfast. Alec tapped the video open. He watched himself speaking. Composed, compelling, in control. Then Julie entered the frame, and the room seemed to tilt. The audience shifted. He remembered the moment vividly, but watching it from the outside made something twist in his chest. She had held her ground, not just with words, but with presence. She hadn't shouted, hadn't mocked, and yet her calm defiance cut through every perfectly crafted phrase he had delivered. Alec closed the video, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. For a man who made a living predicting behavior, he hadn't seen this coming. He opened a new tab and typed her name. Julie Newman, 30, University of Chicago, background in behavioral ethics, co-founder of an organization called Dignity Code, field projects in Cambodia, Senegal, Brazil. She didn't just talk, she acted. There were photos, her in crowded schools, refugee clinics, data literacy workshops held under leaking roofs. He scrolled slower. There was a photo of her with a group of women holding old smartphones, laughing. Another of her in a rainstorm, soaked to the bone, grinning as she helped erect a temporary data center during a monsoon emergency drill. She was inconveniently real. "Sir," his assistant buzzed through the intercom, "CNBC wants a statement. They're asking if you'd like to respond to Ms. Newman's comments." Alec didn't answer immediately. His reflection stared back at him from the black glass of the window. Immaculate, successful, and somehow hollow. He finally picked up the receiver. "Tell them no comment and cancel the afternoon meetings." "Everything, sir?" He hesitated. "Everything." Then he rose from his chair and walked toward the wall of screens at the far end of his office. They blinked to life. Market data, user flow, behavior forecasts. All perfect, all precise, all meaningless in that moment, because for the first time in years, Alec Grant had no idea what came next. It was late afternoon when Julie heard the knock. 3 short raps, firm, deliberate, not urgent, but not casual either. She looked up from her laptop, still seated on the worn couch in the office of Dignity Code. The overhead fluorescent light flickered softly. Outside, the late October sky was gray and dull, the kind of light that pressed down on your thoughts. No one knocked at the office, not without texting first. Julie crossed the room, her steps slow, guarded. She peeked through the narrow window in the door, and there he was, Alec Grant. No cameras, no entourage, just Alec, in a charcoal overcoat, a black turtleneck, and that unreadable look that made people either worship him or want to throw something. She opened the door halfway. "You're really not good at taking hints, are you?" Alec's lips twitched. "I've been accused of worse." Julie didn't move. "What do you want, Grant?" "To make a donation," he said simply. "To support the ethical use of data." Julie stared at him. "You want to pay for your conscience to feel cleaner?" "No," Alec replied, not smiling this time. "I came to listen." That made her blink. She stepped aside reluctantly, letting him in. The office was modest, secondhand furniture, whiteboards scribbled with handwritten timelines and budgets, half-drunk coffees gone cold on scattered desks. He glanced around but didn't comment. He seemed smaller here, or maybe just more real. Julie sat back down, folding her arms. Alec remained standing, like he didn't know whether he was welcome or tolerated. "I watched your other speeches," he said after a pause. The ones no one clips, the ones without applause. So, you did your homework? Julie said. Still doesn't explain why you're here? Because, Alex said, walking slowly toward the whiteboard, I think you're right, at least partly. Julie arched an eyebrow. That's the most humility I've seen from a billionaire all week. Alec turned, resting one hand on the edge of the desk. You called me out in front of the world, and I deserved it. But I'm not here to fix an image. I'm here because I haven't stopped thinking about what you said. Julie studied him. There was no smugness in his face now, just tension and something quieter, fatigue maybe, or the first flicker of doubt. Julie narrowed her eyes slightly. You're not here because I said something new, she said slowly. You're here because I said what everyone else was too comfortable to say out loud. Why did that bother you? Alec didn't answer right away. His gaze dropped to the scratched-up surface of her desk before meeting hers again. Because you meant it, he said finally. Not as a pitch, not as a theory, but as something you've already paid for. I've seen arguments like yours, polished, strategic, loaded with data. But you didn't argue. You stood there like you didn't need to win, and that made every defense I had sound rehearsed. Julie didn't speak for a long beat. The air between them changed. Julie finally spoke again, her voice lower now. So that's what unsettled you, not the facts, the way I didn't ask for permission to speak them. Alec nodded. You didn't ask, and I didn't know how to argue with someone who wasn't trying to win. Julie looked away. Just for a second. But in that second, something fragile passed between them. Not agreement, not understanding, but maybe recognition. She unfolded her arms slowly. So now what? You want me to believe you've had an epiphany? Alec didn't move. No. I want you to know I'm listening, and I'm not sure what that means yet, but I'm not here to convince you of anything. Silence settled over the room again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was cautious, observant. Like two people on opposite ends of a suspension bridge, waiting to see who would step forward first. Julie stood up, walked past him, picked up a file from the counter and dropped it on the desk in front of him. Read that, she said. It's a report we compiled on algorithmic bias in public benefit systems. Real people, real harm, not theory. Alec looked down at the folder but didn't open it. I'm not here to debate you, Julie. Good, she said. Because I'm not here to change you. That hung between them a moment, and then something softened around her mouth. Not quite a smile, more like an easing of the muscles that had been tense since he walked in. You're still annoying, she added. I'd be worried if I wasn't, he replied. She shook her head, took a breath, and moved toward the door. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. You should go. Alec nodded, but didn't rush. He stepped outside, pausing for just a second at the threshold, and when he looked back, she was already facing her computer again, focused, composed, exactly as she'd been before, and yet nothing about that room felt the same. Not to him. Alec couldn't sleep. The lights were off in his penthouse, but the city below was a constellation of movement, traffic pulsing like blood through the veins of San Francisco, buildings blinking like circuits alive with decisions, transactions, predictions. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window barefoot, the coolness of the marble beneath his feet grounding him in a way nothing else did anymore. His tablet was on the coffee table behind him, still glowing. Julie's words from the summit had been fed into his speech. Recognition AI, not for surveillance, but for study. He had replayed the transcript again and again, not just to refute her, but to understand why he couldn't. He had built systems to catch fraud, to predict political unrest, to detect early signs of schizophrenia from text messages. But nothing, no algorithm, no model, had prepared him for Julie. The way she had challenged him without theatrics, the way she didn't try to win, She just refused to lose herself, and that terrified him. He walked to the kitchen, poured himself water he wouldn't drink, and stood at the counter like he used to when he lived in a single-bedroom apartment on Market Street. Back when his code was messy and his ambition was clean, his phone buzzed. A news article. Not about the company, about her. Julie Newman speaks on stage again. Ethics in AI isn't optional. There was a photo, not posed. She was mid-sentence, eyes intense, hand slightly raised. Behind her on the screen, not a chart, but a face, a blurred one. The caption read, "The unseen cost of predictive policing." Alec read the article line by line. She wasn't just attacking tech. She was building a movement, a language. He shut the screen, breathed deep, then opened a folder on his drive labeled AEGIS_V2. Inside were outlines for a new AI framework, one that didn't just observe, but respected boundaries, one that didn't just predict, but requested permission. He didn't name it after himself. He named it after her. Newman 01. Not because he needed her approval, but because he couldn't move forward without her presence embedded somewhere in the future. He looked up again. The city hadn't changed, but something inside him had. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like the first real decision he'd made in years. Julie didn't hear Alec come in. She was crouched by the filing cabinet, wrestling with a stubborn zipper on her duffel bag, when his voice drifted through the quiet room like it belonged there. "You're starting to make this office your airport gate." She looked up, startled but not surprised. Alec stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame like he'd done it 100 times before. Hands in pockets, hair just barely tousled, like he'd tried to make it messy on purpose. His smile was crooked in that infuriating way that said he knew he shouldn't be there, and yet was exactly where he wanted to be. Julie rolled her eyes. "You again?" He shrugged, taking a step inside. "I told myself I'd stop by for 5 minutes. Just long enough to say hi. And maybe check if you've changed your mind about coffee made by people instead of machines." She didn't answer. The duffel zipper gave way with a snap. She stood, lifting the bag onto the desk. That's when he noticed it. Really noticed it. The bag was packed full, field notebooks, chargers, a rolled-up map peeking out from the side pocket. "You leaving?" he asked. "Palawan," she said simply. He blinked. "Palawan as in the Palawan?" Julie nodded, wiping her hands on the side of her jeans. "Why there?" There was no judgment in his tone, just curiosity, but still she paused, as if deciding how much to let him see. She opened the top flap of the duffel, pulled out a folder thick with handwritten notes, photos, ink-smudged diagrams. She handed it to him without a word. He opened it. "There are villages out there," she began, her voice quieter now. "Places the state has never really reached. No IDs, no birth records, no census data. It's like they don't exist. Not digitally, not bureaucratically. When typhoons come, and they do, harder and more often now, there's no record of who lived where. No system flags their absence. Aid doesn't arrive because no one knows where to send it. Because as far as the grid is concerned, those people were never there to begin with." Alec didn't interrupt. His eyes moved slowly across a photo of a woman standing in knee-deep water holding a child. There was a timestamp, but no name. Julie continued, stepping a little closer. "I've met grandmothers who've lost homes 3 times, children born during floods whose births were never recorded. They grow up and still don't exist. When relief organizations run simulations, they get skipped. When predictive algorithms determine risk zones, these families fall through the gaps." He looked up. "And what do you do for them?" She shrugged, but it wasn't indifference. It was exhaustion. "I gather what the systems won't. I record their words. I photograph their maps. I help them tell their stories in a way that might someday be enough to make them visible to people who build things that pretend to see." She looked at him then, fully. Because someone has to. For a long moment, Alec didn't speak. The sound of the city outside, the traffic, the hum of construction, felt miles away. "When's your flight?" he asked quietly. 4 hours. He nodded slowly, then without hesitation. Take my jet. Julie blinked. What? Direct route, no layovers. You'll get there faster, rested. You'll have more time with the people you came to help. She shook her head. I'm not flying on your billionaire guilt express. Alec chuckled, but there was something soft beneath it. Then don't take it as guilt. Then how? She asked. Arms folded now, brow lifted. He stepped closer, just enough. Take it as friendship, he said. Then after a breath, or interest. Genuine in what you're doing, in helping, and maybe, he exhaled slowly, in knowing you better, if that's something you'll allow. Julie wasn't prepared for the way her chest tightened, not because of the offer, but because it didn't sound like a man trying to impress her. It sounded like someone trying, awkwardly, to be real. She glanced back at the duffel, then at the folder still in his hands. You'd have to drop meetings. Alec slicked his hair back with one hand, cool as ever, before speaking. I already did. She looked away, because looking at him made it harder to say no. After a long pause, she picked up the duffel and swung it over her shoulder again. If you're coming, she said without turning back, you carry your own bag. He smiled as he followed her out. No private car, no grand gestures. Just two people stepping into something neither one of them could yet name. And above the city the jet waited, fueled and quiet, ready to take off into something dangerously close to real. The jet moved like silk through the clouds, slicing into the horizon, where the sun broke the ocean in gold. Julie sat near the window, her fingers curled around a porcelain cup that looked too expensive to drop. She hadn't touched her coffee. She was too aware of the silence, the chill in the air, the man across from her. Alec had barely spoken since takeoff, but every so often she'd glance his way, and there he was, staring at the ocean like he could read the undercurrent. Like maybe somewhere beneath the waves he'd buried something and was waiting for it to surface. They didn't land in Palawan. There was no runway for jets like his. Instead, the plane touched down on a nearby island, smooth as breath, and from there, a waiting speedboat cut across turquoise water like it had memorized the path. Julie sat in front, hair loose, face turned toward the wind. The salt stung her lips. The notebook on her knees flapped open, ink smeared and sun-worn. She didn't say much. Neither did he, but Alec didn't check his phone. Didn't ask for Wi-Fi. He just looked around like everything was louder here. The cliffs, the sea, the silence between them. The Jeep that picked them up looked like it hadn't known a clean day in years. Paint cracked, windshield foggy. Julie climbed in like she'd done it 100 times. Alec hesitated just long enough to notice, then followed, even drenched in humidity, with hair mussed from the salt wind and sleeves rolled to his forearms. Alec Grant looked absurdly composed. He was tall, with the kind of frame that made old t-shirts look like designer cuts. Fit, bronzed, a little too perfect for the dust-covered Jeep. His eyes were a rare hazel gold, the kind that caught light and questions in equal measure. Hair usually slicked back with intention, now curled slightly at the ends, tousled by island heat. A few strands of silver near his temples did nothing to age him. Instead, they sharpened the cool edge he already carried. There was something quietly magnetic about him, and the fact that he didn't seem to care only made it worse. They drove through forests that looked older than memory, winding roads that smelled of dust and mango. Julie pointed out faded signs. Alec said nothing, but he watched. Really watched. The motel wasn't a motel. It was a line of rooms with no air conditioning, no lobby, and no keys that worked right. But the sea was 10 steps away. Julie smiled as the owner embraced her. Same woman, same welcome. She kept your room, Alec said, his voice low. Every time. But when the woman turned to him, she looked apologetic. No more rooms, she said. Only small garden hut. Very small. Julie laughed. It was quick. Unfiltered. You're putting a billionaire in a bamboo closet. Alec didn't flinch. I'll survive. He wouldn't. Not really. The bungalow was the size of his bathroom. The fan wheezed like an old dog. and something crawled in the rafters. When the door creaked shut behind him, he stared at the walls and whispered, "What the hell am I doing?" But he stayed, because she was here. And maybe that was the answer. An hour later, they were bouncing along a dirt road in a Jeep that seemed to be begging for a mercy killing. Julie sat in the passenger seat, speaking fast, colloquial Tagalog with her driver. Alec was behind her, clutching the side rail, knees braced against the jolts of every pothole the Jeep hit. The village was not far, but it seemed a country away. Stilted houses, tarpaulin roofs weighted with stones. Goats and children ran between shaded porches. An old woman did something slow and purposeful in a clay pot. The kind of thing that was done only slowly and purposefully and not because you really had to be anywhere else. Julie dismounted with a smile that relaxed her entire face. She was known here, not like a visitor, but like someone who would always come back. Alec was one step behind, sunglasses slipping down his nose. He could sense the sweat already pooling beneath his shirt. They began at the community hall. Julie spoke with a teacher who had not been paid in 6 months but arrived at work every morning. And Alec said nothing, just listened. They later went to the school. Kids ran to Julie like she was a holiday. One snaked an arm around her waist and dashed away. She turned to look at Alec, smiling with her eyes. He shrugged, with a "who can understand these things?" sort of sense of frustration about everything. "You're the favorite." They sat down under a tree in the village square in the middle of the day. Julie distributed sandwiches in brown paper, and Alec opened the cooler full of mango juice. A little girl grabbed her hymnal and sat down next to him, wordless. She didn't drink, just watched him, legs swinging. He looked at her, then at Julie. Julie smiled where she talked to a young mother. It wasn't teasing. It was something warmer, something careful. The light was beginning to fall to one side by late afternoon. "Come on," said Julie, gesturing for Alec to follow. "I've got something to show you." They picked their way along a narrow path lined with tall grass, then downhill through trees. When it opened, the ocean was waiting. Still infinite. I found a hidden cove of beach that had sand as white as paper, and water that moved so little, I'm not sure, looking at it, that it was even part of the ocean. Julie waded out into the surf, her pants rolled up around her knees. Her shirt was undone, her hair hanging now, dark and thick with salt and heat. She didn't speak, just stood there, ankle deep. Alec watched from the shore, not because he didn't want to enter, yet because seeing her, at home, at this moment, was a kind of benediction. She turned. "You are going to miss sunset." He didn't answer. He just stepped in. And when she had slipped, when her heel skidded on a slick rock just below the surface, he had been the one to catch her, one hand around her waist, one heartbeat between them. She steadied, didn't move away. He didn't let go. The girls dried themselves by walking barefoot along the sand to a spot Julie knew. Not a restaurant exactly, just a grill embedded in the sand, a few tables mismatched with chairs, and a man by the name of Roland who whipped up the best grilled fish on Palawan. They sat by the fire with their toes buried in sand and hair still damp. Alec ate slowly. Clams, seaweed salad, rice baked in banana leaf. He stopped midway through a bite and blinked at her. "This is not what I had anticipated, but it's better than most of the places I've eaten in San Francisco." Julie grinned. "You don't say." He used the back of his hand to wipe his mouth. "I don't say it if I don't mean it." By the time his bandages were being replaced at the motel, the moon had long since started to rise. The cicadas hissed in the trees. Julie paused in front of her door and turned to him. "You okay?" He scratched at his arm. "I've been eaten alive." She dug into her bag and flung him a small bottle. "Repellent, welcome to the tropics." He caught it, then gazed at her. "Thanks. For today." Julie's face softened. Get some rest. We have to woo more kids tomorrow. She spun around and disappeared within. He lingered there still. It wasn't just the bugs that made him restless that night. The morning sun had not yet fully climbed into the sky, but the thickness of the humid air could already be felt on their skin. It has been a day that, born of a tropical night, has felt different from the beginning. The chill which came after the rain would now only pass into sweltering heat. As always, Julie woke up early, grabbed her notebook and packed her bag. Too much food, too much water, bug spray, unnecessary items she'd grabbed just out of habit. It seemed, except for the slight difference. Just like another morning, but something inside her was being changed. She was finally beginning to lose the sense of certainty that had always made her feel safe. Alec popped out of his bungalow on Friday morning, wearing a white t-shirt and blue shorts. His hair was a bit ruffled, and he looked like a man who had not quite slept through the night and hadn't been that upset about it. The restlessness in his look had given place to a calmer examination. When they came together in the motel courtyard, no words were necessary. There was a gentle smile as they glanced between each other. The dinner, everything that had followed, still hung delicately in the air between them, but neither was ready to reach for it now, or yet. The trip was bumpy, the road even bumpier than the one the day before. This path swung slightly more inland, more unrestrained, less felt. Scrawny paths dripped into trees, decrepit fences held tiny fields, goats dizzied around the jeep, and distant kids gawked from behind, waving palm leaves. Alec no longer seemed too much. Wiping his hands on his shorts, he passed out candy to the children. He sat by Julie in the village shade, listening with his eyes, not requiring a camera to record what counted, Julie noticed. Without looking, just off to one side, she watched Alec offer a child a piece of chocolate. The boy stared for a few seconds, then picked it up and climbed into Alec's lap. Alec did not flaunt that. He just accepted it. That sound of quiet acceptance melted something in Julie, a warmth that flushed through her, simple and unsuspecting. Perhaps he's not exactly what I thought, she reflected in silence. Rich is not just rich. An executive, not just an executive. There's something quieter, something real. By lunchtime, they had assembled beneath a broad tree behind the village and were preparing for photos with the children. Ben, the village photographer, came, carrying his camera on a strap round his neck. Julie was waving at him from afar. Alec held back, but never quite stopped watching. He saw her tying her hair back, crouching down to talk to a little girl, laughing when one of the kids touched her cheek. He didn't approach the frame, didn't want to be part of the moment, just observed. His silence crowded around Julie, as if it were a memory that had yet to happen. The sun was lowering when they got back to the motel. Hearts of gold between the palms, shadows cast long on the sand. Julie glided into her room, washed her hands, and took down her hair. She scrolled through some of Ben's shots on her phone. One photo captured her. And she's laughing, with the children all laughing, and in the blurry background, there was Alec, and he was watching her with this really quiet intensity. She looked at it for a moment, and then turned the phone off. An hour later, a knock at the door. Alex stood there with his hands in his pockets and his light linen shirt and had his head cocked to one side. Out went the CEO confidence. In came something more human. Be ready in a bit. There is a good restaurant there by the beach. I made us a reservation. One of Julie's eyebrows shot up, and she took a step back in shock. When did you have the time to set this up? Alex smirked. Would it have been less surprising if I had already? He gave her a knowing glance. I think you're starting to get it. I have a way of finding beauty. When they arrived, the table was set for them on the soft white sand, linen draped over it, candle jars and flaming torches, flickering in warmer tones, illuminating the shore. The ocean was not just a backdrop, but an element of the scene. The menu was plain, but the food was fresh. Grilled seafood, lobster, calamari, rice wrapped in leaves, slices of cucumber and prawns under a drizzle of mango sauce. Julie was truly shocked. The tempo, the place, the contemplation, it all struck her in a spot she typically protected. Dinner passed without a lot of talk, but it was the sort that mattered. Alec talked about his marriage, just once, brief. He conceded how his relentless focus on work swallowed everything else, he and his wife becoming strangers without even acknowledging it. Julie opened up too, about never staying in one place for long, about how no one had ever kept up with her, how most people hadn't even tried. Alec dropped his eyes, put down the fork. Maybe what you need is not somebody to catch up, he said, but somebody who can walk alongside you. No race, no chase, just stay with you. Julie looked out toward the sea, her voice quieter. Sounds simple. It's not. Alec didn't argue. He glanced down and grinned, not in response, but in silent acknowledgement. They walked back slowly. Neither rushed. Alec inclined his head at Julie's door. "Good night, Julie." Julie smiled. "Thank you, Alec, for tonight. It was really lovely." Alec's smile broadened, boyish and warm. "It was my pleasure, Julie." Just as she was opening her door, she looked back. "Oh, Alec. The last couple of days have been better than nice. I wasn't entirely sure at first, but then when I saw you here with the people in the village, well, I'm not going to say it didn't move me." Alex stared her in the eye. "If you know me more, I think you probably like me more." "Please," Julie exclaimed with an eye roll and long sigh. "Oh, God." Alec laughed. All right, I'll be serious. These 2 days have been amazing. Mosquito bites, squeaky beds, my leaky little bungalow. None of that ruined anything." Julie smirked before shutting her door. "Good night, Alec. I'll see you in the morning." The rain was absolutely relentless that night. It didn't sprinkle. It rained as if the sky were cracked. Alec might have been able to face the whistling wind in his bungalow, but when water began to drip onto his face from the ceiling, he'd had enough. It was nearly 3 a.m. He sat up, groaning. "I've got to find a better shelter." Julie woke to a knock, her heart pounding. She was wearing a white tank top and gray sweatpants and stumbled to the window. In the rain, it was Alec she could see, wet to the bone, the t-shirt beneath his shirt clinging to his chest, a droplet swinging from a tendril of hair. When she opened the door, she burst out laughing. Alec raised his hands. "Julie, can I come in? My room's basically a swimming pool right now." Julie put her hand to her mouth, stifling giggles. "Oh my God. Yeah, get in here. You're freezing." She cranked up the heater, cleared a spot on the couch, and beckoned. "You're going to get sick if you don't take them off. I'll grab a robe." She paused. "You're so not made for this kind of chaos, huh?" As she brought the gown back, Alex stood in his boxers with a handful of sopping wet clothes and no place to put them. For the briefest moment, Julie's eyes roved his body. Narrow, muscular, tanned, with the sort of body that conveyed disciplined exertion that had never been too much work. Her breath caught slightly. "Put this on," she said hastily, passing him the robe and looking away. "I'm going to hang these in the bathroom." Alec observed her flustered gestures, the abrupt shift of her eyes from his. There was something weirdly charming in that. It was as though this smart, confident woman was unraveled by something as common as human flesh. On impulse, Alec grabbed for her wrist. "Julie." "Leave them. It's fine." Julie froze. Alec stood beside her, now in only his boxers, his hand sliding softly down her wrist to her shoulder. "Julie," he said under his breath, and his voice was low and husky. "I've never felt like this before. I can't get you out of my head." Julie peered down at the clothing in her hands. "I should hang these." Alec picked them up softly and tossed them onto the nearest chair. She didn't move. Then, oh so slowly, he reached out and touched her face. His other hand curled around her middle. His eyes roved over hers, not commanding, but expectant. "Julie, This time she gazed right back. She pressed into him, her fingers coming to his chest. She kissed him, no question about it, very deliberate. She wanted this. Him. Tonight. They didn't hold back. When morning light first slid between the slats of the shutters, the room still smelled of magnolia and skin. Alec wakened with Julie pressed to his chest, the heat of her body and the feel of her breath enough to make his head reel. He was, for the first time in a long time, alive, every cell buzzing. He attempted to slide out of her without waking her, his fingertips following her spine, but Julie began to stir and opened her eyes with a slow smile as she raised her gaze up. "I didn't mean to wake you," he whispered. She didn't answer. She just kissed him. It had begun as a soft good morning and became something lower, slower, hungrier. Outside, the sun was quickly rising and paradise was only temporary. But they had this moment, and neither was willing to give it up quite that easily. The return to San Francisco felt warmer than their departure. Alec couldn't seem to stop reaching for Julie, the brush of a hand, the tuck of hair behind her ear, the way his eyes searched her face when she spoke. And Julie, while more reserved in her touches, didn't hide her admiration. Her glances lingered, and her laughter came more easily now. Unlike their sleepy departure, this 16-hour flight passed quickly. Julie shared stories of her past travels. Alec talked about how he first stepped into the world of AI, and at one point, they realized they were both die-hard fans of Lost series. That led to a spirited debate about which one of them would survive longer if their plane crashed on a deserted island. They laughed like they'd known each other forever. The city was loud, gray, and indifferent, a stark contrast to the lush quiet of Palawan, but neither of them resisted the shift. They adapted. Alec's driver picked them up from the VIP exit. Julie leaned her head against the window as the car slid through the traffic. Alec watched her quietly. The city used to feel familiar, but now, with her beside him, it all felt new, charged with possibility. When they arrived at his estate, Alec didn't hand off her suitcase to his staff. He insisted on carrying it himself. Julie noticed the gesture and smiled to herself. A gentleman, she thought, handsome, sexy, kind, and lives in a mansion with actual staff. You've got to be kidding me. Though they were exhausted, they headed to the kitchen and made coffee together. Alec, who usually relied on his espresso machine, was amused when Julie reached for the French press. He let her take the lead and found he liked the routine, the simplicity, the way the act of making coffee together felt natural. That evening, Alec took her to a beachside restaurant, elegant, minimal, tucked beside the water. They caught the sunset just in time. Julie wore a simple linen dress, understated but effortlessly striking. Alec, in a black shirt and gray trousers, looked as polished as ever, but relaxed. Conversation flowed easily. Light, flirtatious. The chemistry was impossible to miss. After dinner, as they stepped inside the house, Julie reached for her bag and said she should probably head home. Alec stopped her. "Julie, I know you value your space. I do too, but I want to see you here more often. This house, it feels different with you in it." She paused, then smiled gently. "I don't feel out of place here. That says something." From that night on, they spent several days together at Alec's home. Mornings were quiet, Julie working on her laptop, organizing her notes, Alec popping in and out of online meetings with his AI team. Afternoons, they made lunch together. Julie was fast and practical in the kitchen. Alec found himself watching her as she plated the dishes, remembering how this same woman had once embarrassed him in front of hundreds during a TEDx talk, and how he now couldn't seem to stop falling for her. That evening after dinner, they curled up near the fireplace. Alec brushed a strand of hair from Julie's face, his fingers lingering, memorizing the curve of her cheek. "Have you ever thought about it?" he asked softly. "Just us. In this city, this house. I could talk to you until the sun comes up. Julie didn't look away. Alec, I don't fall easily, but I can't pretend I don't feel something with you. He lowered his head, his hands gently finding hers. I'm learning to move at your pace. You've probably noticed. Julie smiled, leaned in, and placed a soft kiss on his lips. I know. Just give me time. Everything's happening so fast. I want this. I want you. But I need to reorganize my life, my work, my plans. Alex slid his arm around her waist, drawing her closer. Everything that makes you you, Miss Newman, I find wildly compelling. He kissed her again, this time with more fire. His lips trailed down to her neck, her shoulders. Take all the time you need. I have no intention of going anywhere. As he gently eased her onto the couch, the fire behind them faded to glowing embers. The next morning, Julie arrived at her office early. It had been 4 days since she'd last stepped inside. She sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and tried to suppress the ridiculous smile tugging at her lips. Julie Newman with Alec Grant? The man was ridiculously wealthy, constantly in the media, living a life completely foreign to hers. And yet, here they were. How did this even happen? She thought. She'd always been known for her independence, her sharp tongue, her activist roots. She was the woman who challenged men like Alec on public stages. And now, she was sleeping in his bed, sharing his mornings, laughing in his kitchen. She scolded herself. Focus, Julie. Get your head in the game. Let things unfold. Don't overthink. Her inbox pinged. A new email. She opened it casually. It was a link to a few reports about a pilot social program in Indonesia. Some academic articles and reports from international NGOs. She clicked one of the PDFs, then she froze. Her eyes landed on a bolded line at the top of the document. Newman 01, Category-Based Social Harmony Evaluation Protocol. She blinked. Read it again. The document detailed a government-backed classification system being tested in a small region of Indonesia. Communities were being scored on social harmony. Some neighborhoods had been deemed low-scoring and were subsequently cut off from certain public services. Julie sat back in her chair, her breath catching. This was Alec's algorithm, his social cohesion model, and it bore her name. What the hell is going on? She thought. Why is my name on this? Why is this system being used to marginalize entire communities? She stood up abruptly, grabbed her bag, and called a taxi. She didn't care what Alec was doing. She needed to talk to him. Now. Julie knocked on the door breathlessly. Her fingers trembled slightly, a blur of anger, fear, and the desperate hope that this was all some kind of misunderstanding. When the door opened, Alec looked surprised to see her, but immediately stepped aside to let her in. Julie? Is something wrong? She didn't answer. She walked past him straight into the middle of the living room. Her face was pale, but her eyes were blazing. What is Newman 01, Alec? Alec's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Julie tried to keep her voice from shaking. There's a pilot program in Indonesia. A social algorithm called Newman 01 is being used to score people based on their compliance, their so-called social harmony. Some neighborhoods have been labeled low-conforming and cut off from basic services. That system, it's your algorithm, and it bears my name. Alec's expression shifted from confusion to realization, second by second. He blinked, took a step forward. Julie, wait. Yes, it's the model I developed, but I didn't know it was being used like that. I swear to you, I didn't. Julie stepped back, her tone sharp and rising. Why my name, Alec? Why did you name a social classification algorithm after me? Was this because of that TEDx talk? Did I embarrass you so much that you needed some twisted revenge? Alec shook his head frantically, his eyes wide. What? No, Julie, are you serious? I didn't do this to humiliate you. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I wanted to honor you. That project, it was meant. Julie's voice cracked with disbelief. God, I was starting to think I was falling in love with you. The way you acted in Palawan, caring, listening, handing out food to children, making people laugh. I thought you were real, but now I see you went there to observe, didn't you? It was never about me or them. It was about how your system would perform in a real-world setting. Alec raised his voice now. Julie, you're going too far. You're not listening. There's been a mistake. But Julie wasn't listening. She was spiraling. Her mind clung to everything she had worked for, every ethical stand she'd taken, and the man in front of her, someone she had let into her life, was suddenly at the center of something that felt like betrayal. You hurt people. Do you understand that? You hurt those communities, and you hurt me. My name, my feelings, you trampled all of it. Don't ever contact me again. I don't want to see your face, Alec Grant, and I will make sure this gets fixed. If you don't, I swear to God, I'll stand against you, publicly, completely. She turned and stormed out, tears streaming down her face. Alec stood frozen. He didn't run after her. He couldn't. Inside him, everything was collapsing. He'd lost her. He looked down at his shaking hand, clenched it into a fist. Damn it, Alec Grant, you need to fix this, now. He grabbed his phone, running a hand through his hair with frustration as he barked into the receiver. Stephanie, get me Jordan. I don't care where he is. I need him on the phone, now. Even though it was approaching noon, Alec poured himself a whiskey while waiting on the line. He needed to calm down. At least enough not to rip into Jordan the moment he answered. When the voice finally came through, it was too cheerful for Alec's state. Mr. Grant, how are you today? Alec's tone cut like ice. Jordan, I need answers. Was the Newman 01 algorithm, my algorithm, integrated into the pilot program without my explicit authorization? Jordan's voice shifted instantly, nervous, stumbling. Mr. Grant, you remember that the government had access to a previous version of the system as part of a test protocol agreement? Well, the system is designed to auto-synchronize with approved partner frameworks once it's flagged as stable. When you updated the structure and renamed it Newman 01, that update likely pushed to the test network automatically. Alec gritted his teeth. So you're telling me the algorithm was pushed in full to live test systems? Jordan stammered. Yes, it's very possible. South Asian partner governments were pre-approved under that umbrella. From what I know, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines have all received synchronized versions. Alec didn't wait to hear more. He hung up. His head was pounding. He hadn't revoked the sync permissions, hadn't locked the update stream. He was so busy refining the math, so focused on making it work. He never thought they'd push it live without a secondary clearance. A well-intentioned model, now in the wrong hands. Twisted, misused, weaponized. He sank into the couch, his hands over his face. You have to fix this. You can't lose her. You can't lose yourself. And you can't look away from what you've done. Real people were hurt, communities labeled, voices silenced, all because you thought you could control the outcome. You owe them more than regret. You owe them action. Alec didn't give himself a moment to breathe after Julie left. Her tears were still vivid in his mind, not just because he had lost her, but because something in him had shifted. For the first time, he couldn't ignore the fact that real people might have been hurt because of his blindness. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about who he was becoming. His first move was to summon the protocol engineers and the company's data compliance director. Jordan was there, clearly nervous, sweat pooling, at his collar. Alec didn't waste time. He ordered every auto-sync protocol revoked, every external network shut down. We can't pretend this is out of our hands, he said. We built the system. Now we fix it. Within 24 hours, An internal ethics board was established. No future algorithm would be released without approval from independent non-corporate consultants. But even then, Alec's conscience didn't settle. When the PR team met with him, they urged caution, release a statement, but not an apology, frame it as an unfortunate misapplication. Alec stood up. No, not this time. I won't hide behind statements. They need to hear my voice. That night, alone in his study, Alec set up a camera. No script, no edits. My name is Alec Grant. I'm recording this without my team's approval, because this isn't about damage control. This is about responsibility. He spoke plainly, not in code or jargon, but with the weight of a man who had finally seen past the lines of his own code. That system, it was a model, but the people it touched, they were real, and I didn't see them. I should have. He paused, his face bare, his voice steady. I'm sorry, and I'm going to fix it. The video went viral within days. The apology felt different, not polished, not corporate, most like human. Alec Grant was no longer just a tech giant. People began to speak of him in a new light. Julie didn't respond. Alec set up relief funds, reached out directly to NGOs in Indonesia, pulled back the pilot program, created a think tank of independent developers focused on ethical systems that prioritized dignity over efficiency. For the first time in years, Alec felt like more than a CEO. He felt like a man again. Julie was in her office when Alec's viral video landed on her screen. The thumbnail showed his face and a bold headline: Grant Tech CEO Alec Grant apologizes to the people of the Philippines. Her heart skipped. She enlarged the window and hit play. There he was, sitting on the same couch they had once curled up on together. His eyes held a quiet sorrow. No handlers, no filters, just Alec. Raw, human. Julie felt like something inside her cracked open. Despite all the anger she had harbored hearing his voice again, seeing the regret in his eyes, it hit her deeper than she expected. This wasn't the polished CEO. This was a man taking full responsibility. He didn't try to justify, didn't deflect. He simply admitted what he had done and promised to fix it. At some point, she paused the video and closed her eyes. She hadn't trusted him. She hadn't listened. Yes, she had fallen for him, but maybe that had been part of the problem. Alec was dangerous in all the ways she feared most: intimacy, vulnerability, surrender. Everything she had spent years keeping at bay, he had brought to the surface. And maybe not believing him, not understanding him, had been her defense. It was easier to be angry than to admit how much he mattered. Easier to believe he had betrayed her than to confront the truth, that she was terrified of needing him. She didn't message him, didn't call, but she read the articles, followed the charity efforts, the NGO meetings, the upcoming launch of new community centers in Palawan. A few mornings later, her assistant knocked gently on the door. "This was sent for you," she said, handing Julie an elegant envelope. It was from Alec, an invitation to the opening ceremony of a new women-led cooperative in Palawan. Inside, a small, handwritten note. "I never forgot what you said, Julie. Real change doesn't happen from the sidelines. You have to step into it. I've stepped in. Now, if you'll let me, I want to walk beside you." Julie held the note in her hand for a long time, then slipped it into her bag. She didn't respond right away, but that night she booked a flight. She was going back to Palawan. Palawan. It was always different for Julie. Years ago, this island had been her first field project as a young social development specialist. Since then, she'd worked in many places around the world, but the bond she had formed with the people here, the warmth, the honesty, had always held a special place in her heart. And then, those 3 days with Alec. They had turned Palawan into something sacred. As the boat from El Nido glided into the harbor, she watched the view quietly. All she could think about was Alec. She had no idea what she would say to him. She wasn't even sure what she wanted from this return, but the fact that she was here, that she had come, said something. A small jeep picked her up. Alec wasn't inside, and for now, that brought relief. She wasn't ready yet. She needed time to find her footing before facing him. The opening ceremony for the Women's Initiative Project was crowded. Locals, NGOs, reporters. But Julie only searched for one face, Alec. She spotted him under a patch of shade, sleeves rolled, white shirt slightly wrinkled from the day. His expression was tired, but not defeated. He was deep in conversation with local aid workers. Julie's chest tightened. He wasn't just showing up. He was working, fully. They locked eyes for a moment, but he didn't move. Neither did she. They stayed on opposite ends of the event, doing what they came to do, speaking, smiling, helping. But when the crowd thinned near sunset, Julie wandered away, toward the shoreline. She didn't turn when she heard footsteps behind her, but she knew. She sat on the sand, letting the last rays of light warm her skin. The scent of salt and wind settled over her. And something else, familiar, Alec, that blend of his cologne and sea air. It made her chest tighten. He sat down beside her, quiet, still. She could feel his gaze on her. Without turning, she spoke. "Why are you really here?" His voice came soft. "Because I realized I hurt you. And I want to make it right, not just for you, but for me too. That system was mine. And I left it in the hands of people who used it to hurt the vulnerable. That's on me." She turned to him. His eyes were warm, his hair tousled from the wind, sleeves rolled up, skin still dusted with the sun from the day. Julie felt it all at once. The pull of this man, the contradiction of everything she feared and everything she longed for, her eyes filled with tears. "I know. I watched the video. I watched it, and I didn't say anything. Because part of me wanted to forgive you, but another part was afraid. Maybe, not understanding you gave me an excuse to keep distance, to not fall any further." Alec held his breath. Julie continued, "I've always run, from closeness, from vulnerability, from anything I couldn't control. But you tried to see me, to meet me where I stood, and I didn't hear you." Alec gently reached out, his hands cradling her face. "Julie," he said, voice low, steady. "Love is the bridge between you and everything." She blinked, surprised, then laughed softly. "Alec, did you just quote Rumi at me?" He smiled and brushed a strand of hair away from her cheek, his fingers tracing lightly across her lips. "When I first visited your office," he said, "I noticed that Rumi book in your bookshelf. I bought the same one, started reading it." Julie tilted her head with a teasing smirk. "You? Reading Rumi?" Alec chuckled. "Just because I work in tech doesn't mean I don't care about the deeper meaning of things. Loving you made me see life differently, Julie. Your fight, your clarity, your gravity. I love all of it, but what I didn't expect was that loving you would teach me to love myself. That's what this is. Loving you built a bridge, not just to you, but to everything that finally matters. I can't walk away from that." Julie sat still. For a moment, her whole life rushed back. Every fear, every wall she'd built, every excuse she'd ever made to avoid surrendering her heart. But now, in front of this man, that armor had crumbled, and it felt like relief. "Alec, and my love for you is the bridge between me and everything." She couldn't hold back anymore. Julie leaned in, pressing her lips to his, and for the first time, she gave in completely, not to the moment, but to him, to what they were, what they could become. As Alec lowered her gently into the sand, Julie was laughing, light, warm, alive. "Oh my God, Alec, I'm not sure I can handle you out-roomying me." Alec's lips moved down her shoulder, his voice rough with laughter. "Then maybe, just for tonight, we stop quoting anything and just feel what's real." And they did. Under stars, under palm trees, under the weight of everything they'd lived, and the beauty of everything that might still come. If this story touched something in you, let us know in the comments. Did you forgive Alec? Would you have walked away like Julie? Or stayed? And if you believe love can rebuild what power destroys, subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. Sometimes the people who challenge us are the ones who change us. Please like, share, and don't forget, love is the bridge between you and everything.